Idaho College and today's broadcast of the North Idaho College Public Forum. The crew is comprised of North Idaho College television students. Your moderator is North Idaho College political scientist Tony Stewart.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today our subject is the issue of abortion, which is a very important issue in our country and has been particularly stressed for the past 10 years. In order to deal with this subject, it is my pleasure to welcome to our program two individuals who are articulate spokespersons for the two sides of this issue. First of all, I would introduce to you Christine Mote of the National Abortion Rights Action League. Ms. Mote is the founder and the coordinator of the Spokane chapter of the Washington State NARAL. Also, our second guest to answer our questions today from the pro-life movement is Carrie Ullencott, who is a legislative coordinator and National Right to Life Committee citizen lobbyist from Finn, Idaho. The NRLC was formed and opposes the fact that each human life is the continuum form of conception, from conception to natural death. I would like to welcome both of you to the program and thank you for taking time to be with us. I would also like to welcome to the panel today to question our guests on this very important issue. First of all, Dr. Owen Cargill, who is Director of Planning at North Idaho College, Lou Reed, who is a regular panelist and has been with me many years, and David Cohen, who's an instructor in the Department of Sociology at North Idaho College. Welcome to all three of you, and I would invite Dr. Cargill to commence the questioning.
Thank you, Tony. I would direct my first question to both panelists, but I'd like Ms. Ullencott to answer it first, please. In light of the 1973 Supreme Court decision to allow women the freedom of choice to have an abortion, is the abortion question really a viable issue in 1982?
I think it's definitely a viable issue because in 1973 the Supreme Court ignored all the scientific evidence that was presented to them indicating that human life is indeed present from the moment of conception. And they said, quote, "We need not resolve the difficult question of when human life begins." And that is extremely ironic because that is the main question in the abortion debate, that human life is indeed present, that abortion takes a life.
Ms. Mote.
I'd respond to that by saying that one of the crucial arguments put forth by the anti-abortion movement is that a fertilized egg is a person at the moment of conception. While there is no disagreement on whether that's human life, it's a matter of when we accept that potential human life as a fellow human being. And yes, in 1982 and 1983, abortion is very much a critical issue for all Americans. It's not only a women's issue, because in the past 10 years, we've seen a terrific erosion of our right to choose, to the point where at this time, certainly next spring, we'll see the introduction and discussion of another constitutional amendment to ban abortion. We need to keep in mind that that's the ultimate goal of the anti-abortion movement, in spite of the fact that they're a minority.
Lou Reed.
Would you expand a bit on what you think are the principal issues? Carrie, you have suggested that the principal issue is the point of when life, if conception is the point of when life begins, and you feel that is central. Chris, would you agree that that is the principal issue?
No, I wouldn't agree that it's the principal issue. I think we need to look at abortion as a reality. That is the issue. It's not a matter of whether abortions are going to be performed. We know that prior to 1973, millions of illegal abortions were performed. We simply want to make sure that they're done safely and legally, accessible to all women, whether they're rich or poor. That is the issue. Abortion is a reality. We have to deal with it.
Carrie, would you respond to that?
Yes, I would say, respond by saying that the main issue concerns is in the abortion debate is that there is indeed a human life. There are two human lives involved, the woman and the child. And are we as a society going to accept the utilitarian philosophy that life, all innocent life, is not is sacred? Are we going to say that life is expendable depending upon the situation? And if we accept that philosophy, as we have for the unborn, then I'm afraid we are going to accept we are going to take that next step to infanticide, and our medical journals in this country are carrying clear indication that our doctors are now practicing passive infanticide.
Well, how do you deal with the question, though, of whether or not abortion is a reality?
Well, I would say that abortion is a reality, and it probably will continue even if we do pass a human life amendment. However, it will not continue to the magnitude that it is today. Prior to legalization, recent studies are showing that there were approximately 100,000 abortions, illegal abortions. Now we are seeing a 6 to 11-fold increase in abortion. We cannot take away a woman's right of free will, but we have to pass laws to protect an innocent human life. Society, through its laws, has to protect innocent human life, as it does in passing its laws in murder, for instance, or as it does it in passing its laws on theft.
Tony, is it appropriate for me to ask Chris to respond to
Yes.
what ended up being a second question?
Yes, I think that when you talk about a constitutional amendment, you have to look at the ramifications of that amendment. If you classify abortion as murder, you need to look at whether you're going to prosecute women as murderers. There's never been a situation in this country where abortion has been classified as murder. The only country in the world that ever has done so was Nazi Germany. I think it is crucial to look at the fact that even Christopher Tietze, who is a noted family planning specialist, has said that in the absence of legal abortion, 7 out of 10 abortions will be performed illegally. Abortion is a reality, clearly.
David Cohen.
Yes, I'd like to continue with this discussion of abortion and the law, and I'd like to address this question first to Christine and then have Carrie respond. Last week, the Reagan administration went before the Supreme Court and asked them to stop deciding so many abortion cases and to give state legislatures much more freedom to regulate abortion. Why do you think the Reagan administration, it's interesting, the Reagan administration is not asking the Supreme Court to overturn the Roe decision of 1973, but they are asking the Supreme Court to let state legislatures regulate abortion. Why? In your opinion, why do you think that is?
My first answer would be that I think it's easy for politicians to see this as a states' rights issue because for the most part they're tired of dealing with abortion on everything from the national debt ceiling bill to other kinds of appropriations bills. But I think that there's a feeling on the part of the administration that state legislatures will be far more conservative than, say, our national policy is. They also realize that the Supreme Court is not going to reverse the Roe versus Wade decision. The problem with handing that decision to the state legislatures, though, is that it would create a situation very similar to what existed in this country before 1973, where you had a few states with liberal abortion laws, for instance, Washington and New York. It creates a discrepancy and inequality in that women who live in states without abortion facilities or with restrictive abortion laws, then it's a form of harassment. It's an inequality because they're forced to travel to states that do allow abortion within their borders. Most women can't afford to do that.
I think the Reagan administration was recognizing that the Supreme Court in its 1973 decision legislated. They overturned with raw judicial power the abortion laws of all 50 states. 33 of those states allowed abortion only to save the life of the mother. And I think they are recognizing that it is indeed an issue that belongs in the hands of the people through the state, their state and federal legislators. And I would question the fact that my opponent says that the majority, if she feels so strongly that the majority favors abortion on demand in this country, why are they so afraid of putting it back into the hands of the people?
Dr. Cargill.
Yes, would each of you give us your interpretation of your particular position on when a fetus actually becomes a human life? Ms. Moat, maybe you could answer that first.
I think there's no question that a fetus is human life. Again, I think the crucial question is when we accept that human life as a fellow human being. I do not feel, and most people do not feel, most religions, most organizations, medical organizations, feel that a fetus becomes a person at viability at the time that a fetus can survive outside the womb. Medically, that's generally held to be between 24 and 28 weeks.
I believe that a human being becomes life from the moment of conception. And any biology book in the country states that human life begins from the moment of fertilization or when the genetic code is present. We are seeing abortions, the majority of abortions are being performed during the first trimester. At this time, the child is perfectly formed. His heart began beating at 3 weeks. He had brain waves at 6 weeks. By 12 weeks, all of his organ systems are present and functioning. He can urinate. He has tiny bowel movements. If you see an ultrasound test, you can see the baby suck his thumb, kick, roll over. It is indeed a human life. It's small, yes, but it's human and living and perfectly formed by the time the vast majority of abortions take place in the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you've joined our program in progress, we have two guests today discussing that very important issue of abortion. First of all, we have as our guest Christine Moat, who is with the National Abortion Rights Action League, and our second guest is Carrie Uhlenkott, who is Legislative Coordinator and with the National Right to Life Committee lobbyist group. We shall continue the questioning with Lou Reed.
I think I would like to ask if there is more conversation that you'd like to have between you on that particular issue, because perhaps, Christine, you'd like to respond to that, the whole issue of what does constitute personhood and humanity in relationship to the fetus.
Never in our system of laws have we recognized a fetus as having the same constitutional rights as a born human being. Never in this country have we done that. I think it's important to recognize that, again, the majority of scientific and medical fact holds that a fetus is not a person at the moment of conception. To enact a law that says that a fertilized egg has the same rights as a born human being would completely overturn our system of laws. It would go against any kind of reasoning. I think it's important to realize that a fetus, yes, it is human life. It is not, most people do not believe it is a human being. You need to look further that if you start passing laws saying that fetuses are people, you're looking at abortion as murder. How are you going to deal with that? Are you going to prosecute women and doctors for having and performing abortions? It's totally unrealistic. It's callous.
I don't mean to belabor the question, but I want to make sure that both of you have a chance to say everything you want to on this issue.
Yes, I to the contrary, I think from 1869 to 1973, the personhood rights of the unborn were increasingly recognized by the state and lower federal courts because our scientific evidence or knowledge of the unborn child had increased. For instance, the unborn could inherit property, he could sue for prenatal and wrongful deaths. He could even force his mother to have a blood transfusion in order to save his life. Now, personhood is a philosophical concept, and it has had varying definitions throughout history. We all recall the tragic era in our history of the slaves, where the Supreme Court defined the black person to be a non-person. He could be bought, he could be sold, he could be even killed by his master because he was nothing but property. And I think we have seen and we are seeing terrible abuses of human rights when we use shifting definition or opinion to define personhood.
David Cohen.
Yes, what I want to ask of Ms. Uhlenkott is how consistent the value system is of the pro-life movement. I know at the responses to the abortion question. You don't favor abortion except, you said, when it endangers the mother's life. Is that correct? Are you pro-life in other areas of our social life as well, extending it far beyond just the application to children? Are you opposed to capital punishment in any form, in any way, shape, or form? Does the movement take that kind of pro-life stand?
No, we have no official stand on capital punishment. I would like to take the chance to be a little bit specific on, you know, so often our movement is categorized as right-wing. Anyone that knows the pro-life movement knows that there are all religious philosophies involved, all political persuasions involved. We are made up of conservatives, we are made up of feminists.
I didn't mean to imply anything about your politics or right-wing or conservative or ultra-right, but I want to know if your right-to-life value system extends beyond the scope of just the issue of abortion.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, we have several pro-life initiatives that have been enacted this Congress and prior to this Congress. I think one of the most important ones is the Adolescent Family Life Program. It offers a wide variety of services to women who opt to choose life rather than death for her child. It offers her counseling and prenatal care, job, and better education. It also tries to get to the young girl before she becomes sexually active. We do have a program that has been that is under this direction of the Adolescent Family Life that is has just begun and has just been financed in Nampa, Idaho.
Chris, do you wish to respond?
Yes, I do wish to respond, because I think it's a fallacy to think that the anti-abortion movement is pro-life across the board. If you look at other life issues, you quickly see that anti-abortionists are concerned with fetal life, but they don't really much care what happens to kids once those kids are born. You find in Congress that anti-abortion Congress people generally vote against other life, so-called life programs, such as AFDC programs, child nutrition programs, food stamp programs. I would respond by saying that their concern is only for fetal life. If they were that concerned with reducing the number of abortions being performed in this country, you would think that they would also be behind contraceptive information dissemination. They are not. They're also, you find, for instance, in Washington, in the state in which I reside, that the same people who are against abortion are against family planning. It doesn't make sense.
Dr. Cargill.
Thank you. Do either of you view the role of the dominant Christian culture in the United States as playing a role in this debate on abortion laws? And if so, the second part of this question, in a country with a separation of church and state, is it appropriate to use theological arguments for or against the formation of laws on this issue?
I believe it's Chris's turn to go first.
Okay.
I think the abortion issue can clearly be defined as a religious issue. The idea that a fetus is a person is a religious issue. Even the National Academy of Sciences testified in Congress last year that the question of when life begins is a matter of theology. It's not a matter of medical or scientific fact. We've seen a lot of involvement by major churches, particularly the Roman Catholic Church, in this issue. My opponent talks about the number of religious organizations involved in the Right to Life movement. I think that we're setting a dangerous precedent if we enact the religious beliefs of one group into law, particularly in light of the First Amendment separation of church and state. And that's exactly what we would be doing. We'd be enacting religion into law.
Carrie?
I definitely feel that this is a moral issue. Any political or social issue involves some type of a moral decision. But it goes beyond that, because this is also a human rights issue. We have a group of human beings that are being discriminated against, are being killed by the act of abortion. So this is indeed a human rights issue. As far as this separation of church and state, that principle was founded or enacted by our founding fathers to prohibit government from interfering in religions. They in no way intended or said that Christian people or churches should not be involved in their government. I think the pro-life movement has every right to be very active in the political process. We have a right to protect our beliefs in the law, and it is often the tactic of the pro-abortionists to silence the pro-lifers by throwing this type of argument at them.
Lou Reed.
There seems to be some disagreement about the safety, the medical safety of abortions for the mother. And I wonder if both of you would give your opinions on dealing with whether or not it is relatively simple now to perform and inexpensive and medically safe. I think you're first, Carrie.
I would like to respond to that by saying that the Center for Disease Control is reporting that there are over 115,000 women that are suffering from complications from abortions each year. Our hospitals are reporting that they are treating thousands of women from abortion complications. I would like to refer to this book, Every Woman Has a Right to Know the Dangers of Legal Abortion, by Anne Saltenberger. In this book, she gives anecdotal cases of hundreds of women who have suffered serious complications from abortion. She also gives hundreds of women who have died after undergoing legal abortion. So the assumption that that legal abortion is safe, I believe, is a misconception.
Chris, please.
Every medical study done since 1973 has increasingly shown, as our abortion techniques improve, that early legal abortion is the safest medical procedure known. There was a study done in 1977 in Seattle, Washington, of 5,000 women. Also a World Health Organization study done in 1978 that showed that early legal abortion has no detrimental medical or psychological effect on the woman. If you look at state statistics for Idaho for 1980, you show that there was not one death shown, and the complication rate was under 1% for all the abortions performed. That's generally true across the country. It's a big argument for the anti-abortion forces to tell you that abortion is a dangerous procedure. You look at the statistics and that doesn't bear with fact. You look at the fact that childbirth itself is 12 times more dangerous than early legal abortion. Also put it into reality, illegal abortion is 40 times more dangerous than legal abortion. Again, abortion is a reality.
David Cohen.
When the Supreme Court made their decision in 1973, it was based on whether or not abortion posed a clear and present danger to the common good. And they're going to be dealing with that issue again in next year's session. I'd like to pose the question to Christine first. Why don't you think that abortion poses a clear and present danger to the common good? And pose that question reverse to Carrie.
I think that legal abortion is a humane policy for this country. I think it does no harm. Studies have shown in countries that have liberal abortion laws that, contrary to what the anti-abortion, the compulsory pregnancy people claim, there is no decreased respect for human life with liberal abortion laws. I think, again, when you look at abortion as a reality, the fact that they're going to be performed whether or not they're legal, it is most humane for this country to further a policy that allows women the right to make that choice. Again, government should be in a policy of being neutral. They should fund or promote programs for both childbirth and alternatives to childbirth. This is a humane policy.
I believe that offering abortion for a woman is not a compassionate answer. We have to realize that in many times there are no happy solutions for a woman. But do we offer her death for her child? Can't we offer her something more compassionate than that? I think that if society tries to solve its social problems by choosing to kill other human beings, we're setting a very dangerous precedent that may affect other areas of life. We are already seeing infanticide we may see euthanasia. If we accept the philosophy that life is not sacred, that life is expendable depending upon the situation, then I'm afraid that we may open a Pandora's box which will eventually threaten our very own right to life.
Dr. Cargill.
Thank you. Dealing with the reality of abortion, would you each give us what you see as the scenario to a reversal of the Supreme Court decision which currently allows abortion? Ms. Uhlenkott.
I think if we would have a reversal on the abortion, the Supreme Court's decision, we would see the end to 1.5 million abortions every year. My opponent often states that the women would be prosecuted for murder. Prior to 1973, there was no successful prosecution of a woman for murder. No one in the pro-life movement wants to prosecute the woman. I have talked to no judge, no legislator. No one in the pro-life movement would want this to come to pass. The law has always distinguished between the victim and the person that's profiting by a criminal act, such as the doctor. The law would distinguish between the woman and the doctor in this case.
Chris.
The scenario that I envision, again, is the ultimate goal of the anti-abortion movement. They propose a constitutional amendment that says a fertilized egg is a person from the moment of conception. That is clearly the only thing that will overturn the Roe versus Wade decision. That's the only thing legally that can. But I think, again, we need to look at that. Before 1973, abortion wasn't classified as murder. We've got a whole new situation here. If you talk about a fetus being a person and you have an abortion that, in effect, kills that person, that's murder. Under our system of laws, you have got to prosecute that woman for murder. You've got to prosecute the doctor who performs it. You've got to prosecute a husband who knows about it. The anti-abortion forces would love to duck this question. They can't. The second ironic point that I'd like to bring up is that just recently they've talked about allowing exceptions for abortion for life-saving purposes if the woman's life were in danger. I think it's ironic, and I really question whether at that point they feel that the fetus is a person.
I must interrupt. I'm sorry we're out of time. The clock always wins on this program. On behalf of our staff, I express my appreciation to both of you. Ladies and gentlemen, our guests today have been Carrie Uhlenkott, who is a member and spokesperson for the National Right to Life, and Christine Mode, who is with the National Abortion Rights Action League. I hope you've enjoyed our program. I express the appreciation to the panel for their fine questions. Please be with us again next week. Have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum can be seen at this same time each week over this station. This production was videotaped earlier by a North Idaho College student crew for viewing at this more appropriate time.